We're ready.
Welcome, everybody. It's great to see everybody to the Lavenia Mastermind session for Thursday, January 28th. I got to look at something here. Excuse me. I want to do some quick housekeeping again, as we always do, to talk about what's on the schedule for today. And today, as usual, we've got yoga basics at 3:30. That's an Eastern time here in the US and wherever else everybody knows how to keep time. And then we have Lieutenant Colonel Mark Riggle this evening at 8 p.m. for global and tactical marketing. And as usual, after this session, you have the hospitality suite for any of those who would like to jump in there as well. Great to see everybody as usual. Richard and Adrian, Janet, Gail, Suzanne, Jody, these are everybody on my front page. Mark, Allison, Daisy, Evelyn, Madam Chop Chop. I laugh every time I hear that. Every time I hear that, Ivier. Julia, Ivier, Virginia, the princess of cookies. Emma. Hey, look at the birthday boy from yesterday. He actually got up hey, to join us. I thought you'd be a no-show. Probably too much celebration last night, but hey, way to post. Way to post. Glenn, Sandy, Carlene, Cyril, Sandra, Linda, Susie, Shoreen. Is that how you pronounce your last name, I hope? Carl and Nancy's on here with us. And that's my front page. So the last time I was, I presented, and rightfully so, I was kind of called out on something I said about negatives and positives. And I believe I said something to the effect that negatives, it's hard to get positives out of negatives. And I'm rightfully so, I was brought down on that one. And so since then, I kind of went on a little journey to kind of, figure that out, because that clearly, as I went about my business, that actually is not true. Negatives I think negatives, as we go along in life, are the lessons that we get, right? The failures or the negatives. Failures are negative, well, perceived as negative, but in fact, they are lessons to be learned. And so negatives can be turned into positives. And I stand corrected and humbled. I can't remember who called me out on it. I want to say it was, I want to say Gail, but I don't think it was Gail. Anyway, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It was done. It should have been. I should have been. So my topic today is mind over matter. And mind over matter can take so many different forms, can take so many different perspectives for us in our lives. As we go along in life, the challenges that we face, and I think I may have a consistent theme here where we talk about, struggles in life and turning those into positives and moving forward and not looking backward. As my dad used to tell me, you use way more muscles in your neck to look behind you than you do to look forward. And I want to, it's funny that the timing of this, a friend of mine had recommended a book for me, and I would recommend it to everybody here. It's called Can't Hurt Me. I don't know if anybody's read that yet. You read that, Glenn? Yep, I thought Glenn might have, because this is a guy, David Goggins, who was, I'm gonna do a tiny book review here quickly, because this spoke to me. Mark, have you read this? I would think that'd be if not, you should read this book. This guy was a Navy SEAL, was abused as a child by his dad, really had a tough upbringing, was overweight, decided to join the Navy and got in the SEAL program, and was asked to retire or resign, I think is the word, two times. Once, the first time he had pneumonia, was the leader of the class. Second time he had, I may mix this up a little bit. I haven't finished the book. I'm halfway through. The second time I think he had a bad knee, and the third time, he may have gone through 4 times, but this guy, every single time had to start over. So what he did was he lost the weight. He got into his class. He became #1 in his class. Every 2 out of 3 times. Third time, he was a leader, but he kind of stayed back, but he was leading all of the events. And I don't know if you know that at least people over on the pond, over across the pond, the Navy SEALs over here go through rigorous training. Again, I can't specifically, they go through, I think, 12 days without sleep, or it might be, I don't know, somebody can speak up about that, but they go through a ridiculous amount of time without any sleep. They're up 24 hours. They might get a little bit of rest, but they're abused. I mean, it's a mental challenge, and it is mind over matter with these guys. And so what this guy did, this guy Goggins, took his negative, his past, his abuse from his father, his being abused or verbally abused in school because of his weight. He took all that when he was challenged and looked back on that and used that as his strength to get forward, to get through his challenges. He wasn't a good swimmer. So when he had time, he went into the pool by himself whenever he could, and he worked through his poor swimming techniques and became a great swimmer. Because part of the training they had to do, they actually had to go underwater and tie knots. And they had to tie many knots underwater and could not surface until their instructor gave him a thumbs up. And he had an instructor who didn't like him and was all over him. You can equate instructors to anybody in our lives, people who kind of make it difficult for us. And the instructor would really make it difficult. So while he's underwater, this specifically, he's tying knots, he started to think back to some episodes in his life, and it gave him strength, and it gave him an extra minute of holding underwater. And now his mind over matter, he watched as the instructor struggled and started to struggle for air. So now he had taken control of the situation, and so they surfaced, and the instructor's gasping, and he's got this wry little smile on his face. So mind over matter. So what do we do when we're faced with those negatives? I wouldn't use the word should, but from reading this book, you can take great strength from this guy did, and I think most of us have. And as I was told a couple of weeks ago, somebody had looked back on their negative. I think it was I really wish I could remember who that was, but she was struggling with a relationship with her dad. So she looked back on that, and that forward in her life today is what's gotten her to get past that and overcome obstacles. Not necessarily the struggle that she had with her father, but struggles that she has going forward. We all have that. Again, I've said this before. We have that at work. We have that in our relationships with whether it's a son or daughter, husband or wife, friends, bosses, whomever. I have in the last 2 weeks have looked back on the struggles and challenges in my life and used those to overcome anything that I might be struggling with today. I mentioned months ago about having a boss who is just a negative Ned. No matter what you do, no matter how hard you work, it's never enough. And so I've taken that literally in the last 2 weeks and looked at what I know to be successes. And so I compartmentalize those successes and use those as energy. But I look back at what went on between myself and my boss. What was the negative aspect, and then move forward. I've had that. I mean, I've been married and divorced. I had that in my marriage. If I had applied this, the challenges in my life a little bit more, maybe I might still be married. I think in some cases, it's a lot easier to quit than it is to really work. Gail's telling me you're right. It was Kim. Gail, thanks. Because the three of us were having a discussion about some things, I believe. Yeah, okay. It was Kim. And I don't think Kim is on today. I don't see her on the first or second page, but yeah, Kim called me out on that, and I'm grateful for her for that, because I've learned some lessons in the last couple of weeks because of it. So as you move forward in your life, the challenges that you might have are, again, are not to be forgotten. The negatives are not to be forgotten. The losses are not forgotten, because those are all the lessons we take going forward, and the challenges that we have going forward that we have for the rest of our life. I think we can use those in our battle plan. And Mark talks about that all the time, about preparing and battle plans. And I just think it's in the last 2 weeks from reading this book and the challenges that this person has, this David Goggins has had. I mean, by no means did I have any of that to the level that he had. I didn't. I don't remember an abusive father or mother. I think I had a pretty good childhood. My challenges are minuscule compared to people that you read about, like David. Kim had some issues. There's other people on here who've talked about issues in their past with relationships and how that's affected them in some form or another. I think that Kim was so spot on when she talked about taking those negatives and learning from those. It's not something I take lightly anymore. I don't file it away. I did. I mean, that was my shortcoming, and probably, it's not going to happen overnight. It's still going to happen. I'm going to file those away and probably not use them. But in the last 2 weeks, I've made it a point and written things down to make my outlook on what challenges me going forward somewhat easier, if it can be. The challenge for me as a single parent also is that there's some back and forth with my daughter, who's 16, and I've talked about that in the past. And a lot of how 16-year-olds get, they know everything, and what they don't know, they forgot. So they tend to be know-it-all. They know everything. And so those fights, those battles, those which are negative for me, I actually, and we don't have them that often, but I would write down what was the topic, what did we talk about, what can I do to go forward and make that a positive for her going forward. So I've used that more so in the last 2 weeks than I have in anything, because there hasn't been a lot of stuff that's come to the top that's of similarity. But I know that I would love to hear some people here. We didn't get into it that much last week because we were on another topic, or 2 weeks ago. But I'd love to hear from people today about some challenges, some negatives in their lives that they turned into a positive, and they used to move forward to get the success to the level of success that they wanted to, or to get to a point in their life where they felt they had mastered what it was they were challenged with, or what they felt that they were being brought down, say, so to speak, from the negative. I think we all have that. We're all going to have that, but I think the best way to overcome those, again, is and I can't tell you enough how humbled I was to be brought out on that negative turned into a positive is so much is using your energy so much more worthwhile than the negative energy, which I think just saps all of the energy out of us. So with that, I want to turn it over. I see that wow, the master himself has his hand up, and I think we'll just jump right over to Mr. Lavenia.
Hey, Jaime.
Good morning.
Thank you, man. Happy birthday, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't look any older.
Thank you. Yeah, that's
you're gorgeous.
Makeup and lighting.
You're gorgeous, man. So I did some speaking events with a guy named Neil Peterson. He was I guess made famous for being the first South African Black boy to circumnavigate the globe in a single man yacht. Right. And so, all right. So what is all that about? Anyway, he would come out with his treasure chest and he would lay it on the stage, and he would talk about his treasures, right? These are props for his keynote speech, right? And he would start talking about all his advantages, and I was discriminated against. What an advantage! And I was, black boys don't do yachting and be mariners and all this, right? Racing around the world, and then we were poor, right? And look at all these advantages I have. And he's talking to the audience about all his advantages, and people are like, these are disadvantages, man. Like, do you need a dictionary or something? No, these are advantages. And so that's his, sort of his shtick, is reinterpreting what these circumstances mean. And so I look at my own life, because you just asked me to, and so thank you for that. I think, well, growing up a child of abuse, right, and lack and limitation and all this, what did that allow me to do that I wouldn't have been able to do had I been a bit more casual about it? As a 15-year-old, adolescent, troubled youth, nearly dead, drugs, right? All of this. When you get to a bottom, it's easier, I think, to have contrast. I guess we'll use like the drunk or the drug addict scenario, right? So here's the drunkard who is enabled by those in his environment, and it's not so bad. The functional drunk, the one who can maybe even maintain a job, right? I don't know, never mind what's happening with their liver, but that's not acute, right? That's not like acute onset of liver failure, right? That takes time. And so as long as they're enabled, they can keep going like that. But if they hit a bottom, now there can be, a spiritual awakening, so to speak. It's like, holy shit, my best thinking has gotten me here, and I can either perish or I can change my ways. And I think that sort of definiteness, that sort of contrast is what I experience. Like, if there's one thing, and I think a lot of people know I haven't had, any mind or mood altering chemicals in decades. And so if there's one thing I can do perfectly, it's that. And I know perfection is this, far off, unicorn kind of a thing. And yes, imperfect and done beats perfect and not done. But with the recognition that this one handicap, this one, circumstance would take me out, right? This is sort of the mantra of people who are getting into like 12-step, we're going to live sober now. Okay, well, there's the one thing today that you can do perfectly, and that is not take a drink, right? You'll screw up all kinds of other stuff, but if you do that one thing, you got no shot. So let that one thing be the line of demarcation, which you will not cross today. We'll talk about it tomorrow again, but just for today, right? Do this one thing perfectly. Don't put alcohol in your mouth, right? That's it. And if there's anything else you've got to do to set yourself up for success, like stop hanging out at the bar, that would probably be a good choice, right? So like, don't put it in your hand. Don't put it in your environment. But if there's one thing that we could say, now this is my advantage because I've seen the depths of despair. Now I've got the advantage. This is a decision. Yes, a decision that I can make, and I can make it more decisively than the person who's maybe flippant about it or vague, those who equivocate with the price. Oh, I'll try. Oh, whoa. Right. So I think, and I haven't read that book, although I did buy it on Kindle. So I guess I get credit just for having it. I feel smarter knowing that it's there. But clarity comes through contrast, and decisiveness comes through high necessity level. Advantages. My advantage is my high necessity level. My advantage is I was almost dead. What an advantage, right? How about in sales, right? Abused child, right? I learned how to sell in single digit years, right? Sell my way out of punishments, right? We're talking about communication now. We're talking about influencing another person. I learned how to do that early. What an advantage. High necessity level. Those are the thoughts that are coming up for me today, Jaime. Thank you. Brilliant topic. Holy crap.
Thanks for jumping in there. It's funny when you said, you talked about the bottom, getting down to the bottom, and I pulled it up here, and this is a saying that I've kept with me. I had it on my wall, but it's funny. There's two things here. If you don't like the view, if you don't like what you see, change the view. whatever that means to you, right? You know, the lead dog, if you're not the lead dog, the scenery never changes. You know, all those kinds of things. I move my desk once or twice a year because if I sit in one spot, I feel like I need to be in a different position. I'll either turn it or I'll put it in a different corner. I've actually put my desk in the middle of the room sometimes, just to get a different view. But I have this, I want to read this to everybody. Sometimes the view is best from the bottom. There are places that you can sink within yourself that are freeing and creative, where your perspective is of a world where there is only the possibility of improvement. That to me, I've had that for years. I think it's powerful. It's something that I you know, when I get to those depths and I look at that and I read that and I go, yeah, you know what? And I've got some history, I've got some past, and I don't know that I ever want to bring it up here, but you know, we all have some depths, and well, one day maybe I'll feel confident enough to bring that up to everybody, because I'm every day I'm on here, I feel closer to everybody, but not yet. So I got who's in line here. I have Julia is next, and then Cyril's up after Julia. Hi, Julia.
Hey there. Jaime, you mentioned divorce and, you know, perhaps if you'd known some things, maybe you'd still be married, whatever. And that may be true. And it may be true for all of us who've been through divorce. It does take two partners, and, you know, we can't take all the guilt on ourselves. But you were also talking about like change or good coming out of bad. And I have to say that when I finally made the decision to get divorced, which was a tough decision, it was so freeing in so many ways. And I won't say that there was never any regret or any, you know, maybe if I tried harder or whatever, but that's an example of one of the times when you're at the bottom of emotional happiness or whatever, you know. At least for me, I was pretty much at the bottom, but I've climbed back so that I feel like I've reclaimed the human being I used to be before I was married or before I was even in that relationship. So, you know, a lot of good can come from that, and beating ourselves up about it. I'm not saying that you were, but you know, I've done that. I kind of feel like, well, get over it. You know, I'm in a better place. My ex-husband's in a better place. We're all in a better place. My kids even have better role models now of what good relationships are. So anyway, that's some good that came out of bad in my life.
That's awesome. And I don't, maybe what I know now, or if what I knew now, if I knew then what I know now, it may not change a thing. And I was at some emotional depths and beyond my wits, and it may not have made a damn bit of difference, but maybe it did. Maybe it could have. Who's to say? And I'm saying I can just mirror you and say, I'm in a better place. She's in a better place. I'm a better parent. There's a lot of good things came out of it. So I appreciate that input.
Yeah, I'll just add one more thing. I don't think I've shared this, but you all probably know about it. But when I was deciding whether to stay or go, a friend of mine was going through the same thing, and she had been seeing a counselor, and the counselor said to her, if your child grows up in a household where they speak French, what do they speak? French, obviously. If she grows up in a household where they speak Spanish, they learn Spanish. If they grow up in a household where it's dysfunctional, they learn to be dysfunctional. So if you can change that pattern and give them a better example, then you're doing your kids a favor, even though it may not seem like it when they scream at you or whatever, you know, why are you doing this? And not saying that that necessarily happened to me, but anyway, I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. It's good stuff. Good stuff. I appreciate that. Cyril, you're up. How are you?
Hi guys. Great topic, Jaime. Thank you. I must admit, there was a phrase I heard quite a while ago that really summed up the concept of what that concept about going to the bottom. And it basically says, sometimes you have to go through the U-bend of life to rise above it. Because I think that's often because we can be arrogant about our direction, or just or blinkered in terms of what direction we're going in. We don't necessarily think it's a problem, and it's only until the problem then starts to slap you in the face that you start to understand that there is a problem that needs to be sorted. And that's just one of the things about human nature that that seems to happen quite a lot with a lot of people. I don't think necessarily happens with everybody. From my point of view, I've realized recently from some of the things I've been doing that what helped me was the fact that I have a lot of reflective thinking. Now, before I worked on it, when my thinking was very negative, that reflective thinking was about kicking myself for not doing it right. And I'm realizing now that although there is still some negative stuff there to work on, and there always is, and there's loads of other areas that haven't really been worked on. But what I've also realized is that that there's, because there's so much less of that now when I'm doing things. I heard a very interesting phrase because I've been listening to Jerry Robert about writing a book, and he came up with an interesting thing, because he studied with one of the guys we read the book on, and that was talking about the paradigm, and how he uses paradigm in the sense that an idea that I thought was really interesting and very useful is that as a baby or as a child, we are basically an open cup in which authority figures throw things into, whether they work or not, and whether they really know anything about it or not. And we end up with those paradigms that we then use, often without even thinking, because they're programs that are just there to be used. But the problem with that is that because they haven't been assessed properly by us, they get used willy-nilly, and then those things start stopping us. Like now, the classic one he uses, he calls it postponement paradigm, which is akin to procrastination. And that by allowing that little thought in your head to say, no, I can't afford this because blah blah blah. When he was talking, Jerry Roberts was talking about when he had just made the largest amount of money he'd ever made in the previous month. I think it was about 250,000 or something, or just under that, for the last month. And then his wife asked him to go shopping because he went home early, and then because he lives in Canada, he went to the shop and he pulled up the red peppers because he really fancied them, and then immediately a little voice in his head said, "Oh, they're too expensive, put them back." So he put them back, even though he had just made the most money in a month he'd ever made, and he was actually going home early to tell his wife the good news. So and so he's talking about that as these little things, and he also said that was put in by his mother, because in Canada red peppers are more expensive than green, and therefore this little paradigm had been stuck in his head since he was a child. So you kind of have to rethink those things going on in your head when they come up, particularly when, but we have a problem that we get stuck in programs that are no longer useful. I think in many ways, because I was so reflective, I was quite lucky that as soon as I basically left home, I started getting counseling, because I knew I was mucked up, and the sooner I got on with it, the better. But the main thing I've realized over time is that sometimes you have to be put in a situation like marriage before you can work on stuff, because outside of that relationship, it won't come up. So some things only come up within the situation, and that can only start to be worked on. So in reality, I remember coming across an idea many years ago about the idea that one should look at relationships as that the other person is absolutely going to press your buttons, and what your job is, both of you, is to learn how not for that to happen, and to grow past them, and to help each other to do it. So, I mean, that's a particular relationship one, but I thought that was really interesting too. Yeah, it's a great topic. Yeah, well, thank you, Jamie.
Thanks, Cyril. Thank you. That's a good point of view. Thanks for the inclusion. Sorry, I was reading. Somebody asked for that little passage I read, that little saying I read. I did post it on the chat in case anybody was interested. Carlene had asked, I believe. I don't see any other hands up. You know what? I'm not afraid of that anymore. It's no big deal. Not a negative anymore. One last time, this is going to be a short session then. Going, gone.
I'll say something.
Go ahead, Nancy.
So thanks for everything today, Jamie. And I just want to comment on what you just said, which is really fantastic that you said, I'm not worried about not seeing hands being raised. And I love to hear that from you, because it's a great reminder to all of us that it's so easy to place our own self-worth, our value on if someone else is validating us from the outside. So that's super cool. Let me draw everyone's attention to Ms. Julia Wasson's t-shirt, because I love that shirt. I want that shirt. I wish it said self-worth, but anyways, it's a cool shirt, and that's what I wanted to share, Jamie, today, was that I too have, so a lot of people were talking about relationships. I've had 2 divorces. The second one was really the most devastating, but in that most devastating one that really cracked me open, that's where I learned in a really, really hard way to maintain my own self-worth outside of anybody else's validation. And that's like one of the most critical things I think we as humans can learn. And when you're in a codependent relationship and where your whole world is kind of wrapped inside this person, you know, when they feel good about you and when they're happy and when they love you and when things are right, you feel good. But when, man, stuff goes awry and you start to, and that person is not available to validate you, and you go down, you know, you go down that pipeline. So I just want to say that for me was just a serious wake-up call. Like, I will never let anybody else determine my self-worth, ever. Like, it's mine, it's nobody else's to comment on. And it is, it's always, you know, we forget that it's always there, regardless of what work we do, what relationships we're in, whether we have money or not. So I just wanted to share that about worth. Thank you, Jamie.
Thanks, Nancy. You're right. You should never measure yourself on what you have or don't have, whether I have hands up or I don't have hands up. I made that comment probably, you know, I was trying to be funny, but you know, obviously out of jest comes some truth, right? So yeah, I kind of, from the last presentation, I got the last 2 weeks again, going through the negatives and positives. It's kind of one of the things I came through the realization of. So thanks for bringing that back up top. I appreciate that. I do have a couple of hands that came back up. Julia's back up for another stint, and then Ivier.
Yep, mine will be short. First, Nancy, that was an awesome share. Thank you for being vulnerable and saying that. I totally agree. And my shirt, by the way, I got in the mail yesterday, unexpected. It says "Worth Fighting For," and it's from Love Justice International, which rescues victims of human trafficking.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's an organization that I support, and the company that Joe and I work for as franchisees, N2 Publishing gives 2% of all their profits to this company every year, to this nonprofit. It saves little boys and little girls and babies and adults, anybody who's in danger of human trafficking. So,
Did you post that? Can you post that if you haven't already?
well, yeah, I guess I just did, but I'll find the website and share it with you.
Awesome.
It's a low budget organization that does a lot of good work. So thank you for letting me say that. And Nancy, thanks for prompting it.
Yeah, thanks to both of you. I can't tell you. That's great stuff. Great stuff. God. Ivier, hi. What you got?
Hi, Jamie. Hello, everyone. Sorry, I'm walking back from a property viewing, so I apologize for the background noise because cars are going to go whizzing past me. But yeah, Jamie, it's great that you reflected on your session 2 weeks ago. And I think what I said on that session was a negative only works in our favor if we actually do something about it, if we take the learning from it, and if we make sure it doesn't happen again. Because negatives, most people just wallow in it and never come out the other side, and so that becomes their reality, and therefore they operate from that mindset, that vibration, that emotional state, and whatever else it is. And so they get the victim mentality, or they just become powerless, right? They lose their self-esteem, and we can go on and on and on, down that path. But if we do see the negatives for what they are and are determined that we're not going to go through those again, or we're going to glean out of that negative experience the good that I believe is inherent in every negative. There's something to be learned, there's something to be gained. If we, push ourselves to pick that up, it's a choice that we have to make, right? And if we choose to be better at the end of that experience, we can. But it's only when we decide what to do with that experience, right, that we end up being better people. So for you, it's, replaying or rehashing in your mind, the conversations with your daughter and trying to pull out what lessons, could apply to her, right, that could help her be better and do better, and have more, going down the line. So it's true for everyone. Like Julia and Nancy, I've also been through a divorce like you as well, Jimmy. But, I was determined that coming out of that, I was not going to stay where I was, right? So I know that I'm, worth, I know my self-worth. I know that, I deserve to be, cared for and whatever, right? But I've also learned a lot of stuff about myself, right? And I have a better understanding as to what it takes to be in a thriving relationship. It's a partnership. It can't all be on one person, right? And it's got to be 100% of both parties being present. So that thing about 50-50, nah. You got to be in it with intention all of the time. You can't check out when you've had enough, go on holiday. No. It's a full-time thing, right? So when you sign up for it, that's what it is. But I have a better understanding of that now. The version of me who was in that relationship is definitely not the version you guys see on these calls, now. So just going back to what I said, unless we decide that we're not going to let those negatives repeat themselves, and unless we decide that we're going to take the good out of those experiences and be better going forward, it can actually destroy us, and we can remain in that state, right? So that's what was coming up for me as you were talking. And, I'm pleased to say everybody on this platform, it doesn't matter what we've been through, we are all showing up every day as better versions of ourselves. And that's what it's all about. If all the learning that we're getting on here is not positively impacting our lives, then we're wasting our time, right? And it will be a shame with everything that's being invested in us and for us, from John right up to the facilitators, right up to everybody who shares, and even those who don't share. It's an investment that we're making. It's our time we're giving up, right? And so shame on us. It would be a pity if all of this isn't having the impact that it should have on our lives, right? But I know from what I can see from this family, we're all doing better. We all have more, and we're all going places, right? And I refuse that anybody be left behind. So it might take some of us a bit longer, to get moving, but we all will move, right? And we all will get to that better place. So whatever it is for us, whatever your why is, whatever your destination is, we are all going to arrive. It might take some, longer than others, but we'll all get there. And we will celebrate each other when we get there. Yeah, but along the way, all the little steps we take and all the milestones we cross, we will celebrate those too, because that will motivate us to keep moving in the right direction. So that's what was coming up for me as you were speaking. Thanks, Jamie.
Wow. You hit me, man. I tell you, it's every time we overcome the challenge we just left, and it's always a better version of ourselves. It's always a VA 0.1 or 0.2 or 0.5 or any of us, Jamie, Adrian, Janet. That's Thanks for the input. I appreciate that, EVA. Nicola is up. Hi there. What you got?
Yeah, quite a deep subject today, but really good though. It's just nice to hear everyone's honesty. So it's definitely touched a chord with me, and I thought I'd just share something. Over the past few days, there's been quite a big realization, and mine's in terms of health, which you've probably heard me touch on a few times. And I think I've realized over the past couple of days, as much as I outwardly speak about wanting to be healthy, be active, have dreams of walking mountains again, and all the rest of it, what I've realized is I've had the kind of physical problems I've got since I was a teenager. So I don't really have a baseline for what good feels like. So as I'm starting to dream of how I want to feel, and I can do that, the reality is when I go back to a day-to-day living, all of the subconscious thoughts in my mind are of unhealthy. And it was Cyril's message there on the rich guy with a pepper. It's similar to that. So for on a morning, I have my affirmations, I'll wake up and I'll talk about health. But then for the rest of the day, which is probably 95% of the day, whatever I do, I'm conscious of my hip, my back, my joints. And so I don't have the answers, because I think that it's just been a big slap in the face for me this week, to what extent the subconscious mind is playing a kind of track, which now I can see it. I can start working on what I need to do to change it. But I think it's probably just, for anyone going through anything similar, a big challenge that you want to get over and you haven't been able to, I think you really need to delve really deeply into your subconscious thoughts and what is on repeat, and start working there and understand how you change those. It doesn't matter how many positive affirmations I throw on it, it hasn't worked up to now. And I think I've just realized this week why that is. So yeah, and it's empowering in a way that I can see it differently now. It's a bit of work to do, but yeah. So I thought I'd just kind of share that that might help anyone else who's stuck.
Thank you. That's great. For me, in my humble opinion, the things that I get stuck on internally, they didn't happen overnight. So I'm not going to fix them overnight. But for, like you just said, to recognize them is probably, for me, again, my humble opinion, is the biggest challenge. And then it should be easier to then try to do what you can to get them uprighted or corrected or changed. Yeah. Yep. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. Well, no hands. So 3210. Anyway, I'm glad for everybody's input here. Always appreciate it. Appreciate everybody here. Love everybody here. Say I love you to somebody today. And go kick some butt. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks, Jamie.
You're welcome. Goodbye. Good night. Good morning.
Thanks, Jamie.
Beautiful, Jamie. Thank you.